Uh, I would like to call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. for the Baltimore City Senate delegation. Welcome to the Baltimore City Senate's delegation's weekly virtual bill hearing. My name is Corey McCray, Senator for the 45th District, and have the distinct honor to be the chairman of the Baltimore City Senate delegation. Before we get started, I would like to do, as we do every week, just acknowledge my colleagues in numerical order by district. We are joined by Senator Antonio Hayes from the 40th Legislative District. We are joined by Senator Mary Washington, representing the 43rd Legislative District. We are joined by Senator Charles Sidnor from the 44th Legislative District. And last but not least, we are joined by the senator from the 46th District. I won't get this too many times to say this, but that's how he likes to be called. At this time, where crossover was this Monday, we will be hearing 4 bills that came to us from the Maryland House of Delegates. We will go in this order: House Bill 1219, House Bill 1222, which has been introduced by Delegate Frank Conway. We will then hear House Bill 226, which has been introduced by Delegate Robin Lewis. We will finish with House Bill 967, which has been introduced by Delegate Tony Bridges. We will hear these bills today and vote on them next week, along with a host of other bills that have a cross file or a Senate version, unless the body has a different posture. At this moment, House Bill 1219 concerns tax notices in the city of Baltimore and requirements thereof. Delegate Conway, I will turn it over to you to discuss House Bill 1219.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Delegate Conway here to introduce House Bill 1219. What 1219 does is changes the requirement for notification for your Baltimore City tax notice to be certified mail versus just first class mail. And this is for accurate tracking purposes, and especially because you know that the United States Post Office says that they might go to guaranteeing mail in 5 to 7 days versus the 3 days. So this way you'll be able to track your information. And with that, I would be glad to answer any questions if you can still hear me. I can't hear you. I can see you talking, but I can't hear you.
No, we hear you very loud and clear at this moment. If you're finished, Delegate Conway, I just want to see if there are any questions from members of the Senate.
Yes, I'm finished, sir.
Seeing no questions.
Chairman Craig, question. Delegate,
yes,
has the city taken a position on this?
No, the city didn't take a position, I don't believe, but it passed favorable through the Baltimore City delegation.
Senator Hayes, what I'll do is I'll ask Natasha Director Mehieu is on here at this moment, and just wanted to see if this is taking a position. If you can step in, Director Mehieu.
Good morning. The city has not taken a position on this bill.
Okay, thank you. I see that Senator Ferguson, then Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Conway, great to see you, sir. Quick question: does it written like this? Would it be passed through? Would it be added? Would the charge associated with the certified mail be added as part of the tax sale, or would it be assumed by the city?
No, the certified mail cost will be passed on to the sale.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Washington.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Mehieu, also with this, and I guess also to the delegate, thank you for this bill. I think it's important to make sure that people are properly noticed, particularly when you're going to potentially sell the right to foreclose on their homes to another entity. That it says revenues are going to go up 108,000. Have you connected with the comptroller's office? I think the Postal Service comes underneath that entity. So I think that, Chairman, I think we also need to reach out to the comptroller because I think the cost would be borne through that that mechanism. Would that be right, Ms. Mihu? That if this were done, that it would be done through the post office, the city's post office?
Yes. In relation to what you're noting in the fiscal note about the $108,000 annually in expenditures to Baltimore City, correct?
Right. And then how much revenue do these tax sales generate? Just so that we can have a context for the cost.
That information I don't have off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to follow up with the information as to, in the past year or pre-pandemic year, maybe a normal year, as to what is generated in a tax sale.
But we would guess it's definitely a lot more than 108,000, right? I mean, it's in the millions, correct? Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Washington. Are there any other questions by members of the Senate? Seeing none, this ends the bill hearing for House Bill 1219. At this moment, we are taking up House Bill 1222. Delegate Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Delegate Conway again, here to introduce House Bill 1222. And what this bill just says is that when your house comes up for a tax sale, that the city has to give you an itemized list of what you're being charged for in the tax sale, instead of just a bulk fee. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you, Delegate Conway. At this moment, Director Mehieu, would you like to say what the city's position was on this?
And the city also did not take a position on this bill. As I understand, under our processes, there would be a way to do itemized tax sale receipts.
Okay, I'm going to go to Senator Washington, then to Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fiscal note actually says that it currently itemizes lien information, and so I guess it's suggesting that this would be redundant. Could you just verify, or if that's in fact the case, and where that comes from?
Yes, I'll be able to come back with specific information as to how the city currently itemizes the tax sale notices.
And Delegate Conaway, I guess you saw that in the fiscal note, that essentially they're saying that this is redundant and that the city currently itemizes. Could you tell us, and again, I'm not familiar with the bill, fortunately, I haven't looked at this issue in a few years since dealing with water bills, but could you, saw that?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can, Senator. Supposedly, the water bills are not supposed to be commingled into your property tax.
Oh, no, yeah. No, I know that. I mean, the part here, I'm sorry to raise water. The city advises that it currently itemizes lien information. So the fiscal writer is telling us that they currently do that. Your bill is telling them to do that. If they currently do it,
what I'm trying to get to,
bill and yeah.
What I'm trying to get to, Senator, is they're saying that they do that, but the information that I received is not detailed. For example, you might have charges for concrete repair, or breakages and things like that for tickets on your backyard where you didn't clean the yard, and these things can be compiled together. And also there's still a problem with the water bills.
Right.
When they're putting that into the tax sales, and that's triggering the tax sales, I think, at $350 or something like that.
$750, yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ferguson.
No question. Just want to say, I can't believe this isn't done already, and good bill.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much, Senator. With that, I would ask for a favorable, and I hope you all have a very nice weekend.
Thank you, Delegate Conway. This ends the hearing for House Bill 1222. We're going to move on to House Bill 226. Delegate Lewis.
Morning, Mr. Chair, esteemed colleagues of the Baltimore City Senate delegations. Great to be with you guys. I won't take long. For the record, I'm Delegate Robin Lewis, here on behalf of House Bill 226. And the reason I won't take long is that this is a common sense bill that will improve the quality of life of all of our constituents in Baltimore. House Bill 226 is a bill that authorizes Baltimore City to direct revenues from automatic camera enforcement into implementation of Complete Streets initiatives. Here's the issue. Baltimore City has a Complete Streets program, for lack of a better term. Baltimore City is committed to creating infrastructure that is safe, accessible, compliant with ADA, and pleasant for the people of our city to use. But the problem is Baltimore City doesn't really have any money to do all that. On top of which, the state of Maryland passed a Complete Streets policy package 3 years ago, that also provides no funding to make Complete Streets happen. And as you guys all know perfectly well, a complete street is one that is racially and socially, economically just. It serves the needs of all users, prioritizes human beings over fast-moving vehicles, and it also recalibrates the hierarchy and the injustice that African Americans and other people of color face when they're trying to move around in the right-of-way. This bill has no fiscal note. In fact, it will help Baltimore City fund an initiative it already wants to do. This bill has no opposition. And I mean, why would it? It's so great. This is the best bill you'll hear this year. And on that, I will just close and ask you for a favorable report. See y'all giggling. You know I'm right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate Lewis. At this moment, I'd like to see if there are any questions from any of our senators for Delegate Lewis.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator from the 46th District.
You know, despite the sponsor problem of this bill, it is such a great bill. Thank you, Delegate Lewis. Your advocacy around Complete Streets is second to none. Just appreciate it. Great to see you, as always.
Senator Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And no, it is a great bill, Delegate Lewis. My question is, do we have, in proposing a bill, do you have an idea of how much the city is currently collecting as it relates to these automatic cameras now?
And Senator, we're going to have Liam Davis from DOT.
Gotcha.
And Director Mehu step in, and they may be better equipped to answer that question too.
Yeah, no, that'd be helpful. The other part that I was saying, I thought like some of the automated cameras was really, they were restricted around school safety. I wonder if there's any flexibility in supporting what's happening at our schools as well to help improve safety around that, or if there's been any thought given to that.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Please.
That's a terrific question. Thank you, Senator Hayes. If I'm not mistaken, there's currently legislation moving that will create safer pedestrian conditions around schools. There was a bill introduced in the House by Delegate Jared Solomon. I'm not sure if it was cross-filed, but I'm pretty confident we moved that bill out of the House, and it would expressly enable jurisdictions to basically implement Complete Streets infrastructure around schools, and that would make kids safer. But there's always more we can do, so I welcome the question and thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Do you know if the legislation that's pending now dedicate any funding towards the safe pedestrian crossing around the schools?
To my knowledge, there is no other legislation under consideration that would help fund safer pedestrian infrastructure, except this one. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all right, excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hayes. Seeing no further questions at this moment, I'd like to bring in Director Mehu and Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the delegation, Natasha May here on behalf of the Baltimore City Administration in support of House Bill 226. I do want to thank Delegate Lewis for introducing this bill. Baltimore City, we have been at the forefront of the Complete Streets program. And as you all know, traditionally roads have been designed and operated with cars at the focal point. And what's great about Complete Streets is that it's important for our roads to be designed and operated for the safety, convenience, comfort of all who access them, whether that be pedestrians, cyclists, mass transportation, not just cars. So the city just released our Complete Streets manual, and this bill would help provide us with a funding mechanism to support the program by requiring that revenues collected by the city's automated camera systems be used to advance the purpose and goals of our Complete Streets program. Importantly, this bill does advance those goals while ensuring that we preserve the city's financial flexibility with our camera programs. So Delegate Lewis did work closely with the administration to ensure that the bill balanced our financial needs by ensuring that the revenue first be used to fund and install the administration of the camera programs, and then it would go to Complete Streets. So to Senator Hayes' question, I don't have the very specifics on hand about how much money the cameras systems use, but we do know in working with the delegate on this bill that we were careful to consider the current uses of cameras and to ensure that funding appropriately also go to the Complete Streets program while balancing what under previous bills is mandated for cameras. So with that, we'd urge a favorable report on House Bill 226.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And then we're going to take questions, and it looks like it's a number of questions coming from the senators.
Yes, thank you. We also stand in support. And to answer Senator Hayes's question, I'm looking at the executive budget summary for FY21. And during FY20, it looks like speed and red light camera violation revenues were $21.4 million. That was for FY20.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to call in the order that I saw it. Senator Hayes, then Senator Ferguson.
Thank you. I actually cheated, Mr. Chair. I still had my hand raised from the last time, but when Liam just explained that, it raised a couple more questions. And so is it the thought that the money that's generated will be used for these purposes? Will it be housed in transportation? Who would make the decisions on like how this money would be appropriated? Would be a function of planning department with the capital budget? Mechanically, how would it work? Liam, anybody?
So that's going to be a decision that's made by the finance department. So Baltimore City Finance Department is going to be playing a big role in how that is managed.
Right, and I wonder if, I am have a deficit in understanding how these budgets works, but I know we get a significant amount of highway user revenue. I wonder, for those who may have served as vice chair of a budget and tax committee or something like that, if they know of whatever effects it may have on like how we, how the state contributes to the highway user revenues that the city receives.
This shouldn't have any impact on HUR. And there's a couple separate highway user revenue bills that specify the percentage of that HUR fund the city gets.
Right. Is there any correlation between the highway user revenue fees that we get and the money that we collect on other transportation stuff? There's no correlation whatsoever. They're not associated.
For these particular dollars,
Yeah.
These buckets with automated cameras and HUR, not to my knowledge.
Excellent. Thank you so very much.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I think because I don't sit on a committee anymore, this is my only chance to have a bill hearing anymore. So hence the heightened questions. The question that I had, I don't know if it's Director Mayhew or Mr. Davis, the safe passage to school or the safe walkways, that would be considered part of Complete Streets as well, right? So would that be a component of potential expenditure?
So would you like me to answer?
Sure.
So my understanding of the Safe Passage to Schools bill is that would require the local school system to come up with that extra pedestrian funding for pedestrian improvements.
But this money could go for those purposes.
I would say in concept, in theory,
Okay.
you could probably make that connection.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Sidnor.
Thank you and good morning. As I'm just looking at this, the question that I had was, are there current limitations that the city has on how it can spend the money the revenues that it gets from these cameras? And is that the need for the bill?
So
Go ahead, Liam.
I'm sorry. Right now, it is spent the way that it is defined within state law, which is for public safety purposes. And House Bill 226 really just specifies kind of within that public safety realm that it's going towards complete streets, which in the grand scheme of things has a huge public safety component to it, but it's a little bit more specific than the existing state law.
So just to be clear, the city could spend the money currently for complete streets, but the city is looking for a mandate to spend it for safe streets, for complete streets.
So I'll step in here and say we're not necessarily looking for a mandate, but as Liam had noted, there are some parameters for the camera programs that specify, for instance, that you have to use them for public safety, on our end for maintenance, for installing the cameras. And so the goal of the bill is really to ensure that, especially since the city has taken so much steps to put forward a complete streets manual and to put a program together, that there can be dedicated funding from all these camera systems that go towards the complete streets program.
Mr. Chair, may I add to that? With your
Delegate Lewis.
Thank you so much. Director Mayhew provided important context for how the city, what flexibility the city has. But I want to give you a little bit of historical context. Baltimore City has been at the forefront of improving pedestrian safety for almost a decade, maybe more. I personally, as a civilian, served on the first complete streets community design process. It's back in 2011, 2012, when you guys were all still in nursery school. I was out there fighting for, okay. But in all seriousness, Baltimore City has been trying for years to make our streets safer for people. And 30% of our constituents don't have access to cars. They depend on transit. That means they're walking from their homes to the bus, to the train and back. They do their groceries, they go to school out, and they're walking and they're not safe doing that. Black and brown people are multiple times more likely to be hit by cars while walking. We know that for a fact from national data. I hope with another bill, we can start getting state level data for that disparity. But in the meantime, Baltimore's been committed to this. And yet, that we've been working for almost a decade to implement these changes, there's been no revenue to make it happen. The city's been really creative and, reprioritizing things, but the city needs a little bit of help to fully implement this vision that we have and that we've been working on. And then remember, at the state level, even though we passed statewide complete streets policy, and we also created a complete streets grant program, the governor didn't fund that grant program. So money specifically dedicated to implementing complete streets at the state level doesn't exist. So the city, once again, being innovative, creative, responding to the needs of our people, is trying to find a way to make these, to bring these benefits to our citizenry. This bill was my idea. The city didn't ask for it, so I don't want them to be put on the defensive. It's a need that I saw, and I felt in my small way, I could strengthen our city's ability to do what it's already trying to do. And I hope that you will see fit to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Lewis. Senator Washington.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Lewis, again for bringing this bill. And I want to thank the city for the support of the bill. Just to Senator Sidnor's questions, I think it's this weird situation where Baltimore City is is a charter municipality. So it sort of walks like a county, but in some very specific ways, particularly when it comes to revenues and taxing, that it needs very specific authorities. And so I think the city is seeing that the legislation authorizing it, for this other context for public safety, that if someone were to challenge it, that it may not specifically have the authorization to do that. And additionally, I think the other component, isn't that so, I guess? And the other component is around the sustainability of the funding, because it is also, to a certain extent, it is, up to the executive and discretion, so that this would maintain, across administrations, regardless of who's the mayor, regardless of who's the head of DOT, that these funds are dedicated for the sustainability, so that, when Delegate Lewis is ready to retire with the rest of us, you'll know that these programs will continue. Is that a good understanding of sort of the? Does that answer your question, Sidnor? And am I right, Director Mihu?
It helps. Thank you very much.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I did have one or two questions, probably around the same line of question that everyone else asked. So you talked about the 20+ million in reference to that was generated from cameras. Are we in, and I get that this is a new administration, so it's 100 days that you all have been there. It's not like you've been there in the past years, but have we at least in past administrations, have they at least as a city made sure that this is on top of what already have been going towards, let's say, the public safety of highway user revenue or our streets in general? Like, it's not supplanting the monies that could, because that's a significant amount of money. And I'm assuming that this is going to bring in a decent amount of resources. But if you all are just kind of shifting pots of, I'm not sure that it does the purpose that it does. So either Director Mihu or Mr. Davis, if you could speak to just the city's vision in reference to this revenue that's going to come from this, and ensuring, just the public that this is going to go to enhance even greater of what is there, not moving monies around. It would be, if you all could speak to that.
Yeah, so what I will say that we did work with Delegate Lewis and our finance department on some of this language to ensure that the money first goes to the sources or required funding that we need to do, and then it would go to the Complete Streets program. And so I'm hoping I'm answering your question there, but I'll also turn it over to Liam if he has any more specifics in regards to that larger pot of money that comes in from the cameras.
Yeah, I think this is a conversation that, should the legislation advance, we're going to have with the city's finance department. DOT obviously welcomes any additional revenue to implement Complete Streets and, upgrade our over 2,000 miles of right of way. But that's something that finance department's definitely going to need to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah. I look forward to having that conversation offline with you all in the coming days to kind of help visualize that. Like I said, I think that it's a great bill. Let me be very clear, and Delegate Lewis let us all know that it is a great bill, but just making sure that it still continues to serve the spirit and the purpose of what she's trying to do is the most important thing, for not just for her, but for our city. So thank you again. Hold on. I think that Senator Hayes and Senator Washington coming back for a second bite at the apple. Did you all forget to take your hands down?
No, I actually raised my hand again, and we don't have to get into it now because we spent a great deal of time, but it would be interesting, Ian. I'm not sure how long the camera system, Liam, I'm sorry, how long the camera system has been around, but I'd be curious to see what have we been spending the money on so far since the program has existed. That would be really helpful to us.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Davis.
I was just gonna say we can ask finance for that. I'm sure.
Okay. Seeing no further questions from the senator, this ends the bill hearing for House Bill 226. Thank you, Delegate Lewis. We're now going to move on to House Bill 967. It's our final bill. That does not say much about the sponsor, but this is the last bill. House Bill 967, Delegate Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the City Senate delegation. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm presenting this bill, House Bill 967, on behalf of Baltimore City administration. And you already know we have Natasha Mayhew from the mayor's office, as well as Liam here to answer any technical questions on this bill. This bill really focuses on Interstate 83, and it authorizes the city to install no more than 2 speed cameras on the interstate. This bill has everything to do with safety. As you all know, especially if you've driven on I-83 going downtown or to take it northbound, it is a major speedway. And so speed is definitely a major concern. No one really drives the speed limit if you even know what that speed limit is. And so Washington College actually did a crash analysis on 83 from 2015 to 2019. In that analysis, they noted more than 2,000 crashes that occurred in that time period. 50 of those were high injury or very severe. And actually last year, March 5th through the 12th, there were cameras that were mounted on I-83 at 41st Street from the hours of 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. that tracked over 350,000 cars. Of those, 42% exceeded the speed limit by 12 miles per hour, and 28% exceeded it by more than 15 miles per hour. One car actually was clocked at 173 miles per hour. If you are on Instagram, you may have seen last week, or maybe it was the week before last, the Chief Ford from our Baltimore City Fire Department actually got out of his vehicle to help somebody who crashed on 83 northbound. And so, it is definitely a major concern for speeding and the correlation between accidents on 83. Baltimore City is the only jurisdiction in the state that does not have the power to maintain or patrol its highway 83. And so no state troopers are able to patrol 83 until now, thanks to the fact that we overrode the governor's veto of the PROTECT Act. But last year in 2020, there were over 1,700 calls for service for crashes on I-83. And so that takes our police, our public safety professionals off the neighborhoods, off the streets, and going back over into 83, to take, for these accidents that are happening. Just to summarize, what will happen in terms of the speed monitoring cameras, as amended, what we also have put into the bill is the fact that there would be speed monitors, or I'm not sure whether Liam would know what to call those, where you would actually see your speed before you get to a speed camera. And so you have an opportunity to slow down before you actually get to a speed camera. And of course, there would be signage to let you know that speed cameras are being placed on 83. The revenues would go to pay for the operation of the cameras, and additional revenues after that will go to roadway safety improvements on 83. And this bill actually sunsets in 2026. And so with that, I would ask for a favorable report. Again, this is all about driver safety on 83 and changing the habits of those who speed in and out of downtown Baltimore using Interstate 83. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those. And before we turn it over to Director Mayhew or Liam from the Baltimore City Department of Transportation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Bridges. I see a number of questions again. I'm going to go with Senator Washington, Senator Ferguson, Senator Washington. You're on mute, Senator Washington.
All right, there we go. Okay, thank you for this bill. I have some questions about, okay, there it is. So who under this, is the city installing these monitoring devices, or is it the state? Well, who will own the monitoring devices?
It would be the city, and I'm sure Liam or Natasha will correct me if I'm wrong, but because we actually have to do everything with 83, the funds would go to Baltimore City, as well as any installation of the cameras, as well as the maintenance of those cameras.
And then I see that, so we're collecting the fee through our finance, the tickets or whatever. And then the balance after recovery is going to the State Highway Administration. Why? If we again, just so that I'm understanding, so State Highway Administration will be covering the cost of roadway improvements to 83. So just tell me a little bit how that works.
Would you like me to jump in?
Sure.
Yeah. So that was amended in the House.
Okay.
So they took that out. So
sorry.
the way, I think the way it was originally drafted, legislative services, we don't really know what happened, but they may have assumed this was like every other interstate in the state where SHA does control it, but it is unique. It is a Baltimore City road.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I don't have amendments on this. Okay,
And if I can add to that, this was Indian Head Highway, if you're familiar with that, was a major concern in Prince George's County. And this bill was actually, we used some of their language in order to put this bill together. And so that may be where
okay, so there's no more, so any excess goes where now?
I-83.
Everything goes to I-83. Roadway improvements, maintenance, signage. And I know Liam has a laundry list of things that need to happen on 83.
Oh, okay, so but it's the city doing, okay, so this was just a drafting error. So it would be the city's Department of Transportation that would do all the maintenance and.
Precisely. We would likely, we have a long list of, some capital safety improvements that can be implemented.
Great. Thank you. Thanks. Great.
Thank you. Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a really, really important bill, and appreciate Delegate Bridges for bringing it. I like the sunset. I think it gives time for us to evaluate the program. Hopefully by 2026, we'll have torn down part of I-83 and reopened. That would be ideal. And hopefully maybe those dollars could go towards the tearing down of some part. But then there's also the redecking issue, which is a massive crisis out there that I don't think we've really quite figured out. So that's going to be a very expensive process. So I have more of a technical question. Doug Bridges, so it looks like the bill came in with the 4 sections and still had the sunset, but it looks like section 2, it was all recombined. So is this just a product of the sunset? Maybe this is a Ms. Cheney answer to a DLS question. I'm just trying to figure out what happened with the section 2, 3, 4 dropped to just section 1 and 2. Something about the enactment date, but I can't, because it doesn't get enacted. So the real reason I'm asking is it doesn't get enacted until October 1st. I mean, part of me would say this should be an emergency bill and move it faster. The only thing is I don't necessarily think I don't know if we want to amend it to get it stuck. So if it needs a separate amendment on something, we should probably think about emergency, but if it doesn't need an amendment, it's probably better to pass clean.
I think I actually drafted this, and I think the sunset provision was because of where the revenue was going. So they wanted it to go to, let me check. They wanted the fines to go to the Department of Transportation to repair I-83 for the first 5 years. And then after that, it would default back to what.
I see. It was just on the funding side.
Yeah, so it was just for the funding. Yeah.
That makes sense. Now the bill is a full sunset for the whole bill at 5 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Senator Hayes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. The president just asked the exact questions I had around this. I was curious about that. I apologize.
No problem at all. I lowered your hand now. Senator.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the sponsor. My sole piece of advice would be to look at the hearing from last year when I had sponsored this bill in the Senate, because it's likely to come, well, it's likely to come through JPR, and I know that there are colleagues who sit on that committee who had raised some concerns. So watch that so that you're prepared when you come in.
Thank you for that, Senator. I definitely have that on my schedule to watch, and we already have it scheduled for, I think, April 1st for the hearing in JPR. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sidnor. Delegate Bridges, I got one question because I didn't hear it asked here, and this may be in line for that administration at some point or DOT, but I don't see in here in reference to warning. So obviously this is a new thing where we're putting speed cameras on highways. And I do think that it's appropriate to let folks know. Obviously I see the signage piece, but typically when a new camera goes on one of our highways from a state perspective, there are a certain amount of days where warnings are given out. And I didn't see that inside of the bill. So I know that that's something that we typically do from a state of Maryland standpoint on our highways, is give a certain amount of warning tickets out, but I didn't see that inside the bill. So if you could speak to that and how you envision that, or if the administration, when they come up to testify, can just speak to that, and what do they think about that?
I think the administration would have to testify on that one.
Okay. Senator Washington, you coming back for a second bite?
Yes, I am. It's more of just to follow up on Senator Sidnor's, and also ask the chairman, is there a crossfire? Is Senator Sidnor's bill an exact crossfire? It's very different. And then also, I know we're looking to put this on the voting list. Is that, Senator Sidnor, are you anticipating that there would be amendments to this bill, or just we don't have to decide that now, but
I just remember one of my colleagues on the committee from Baltimore County thinking that it was more going to be a tax on some of his.
Oh, I got you. Okay, great.
So I was just being prepared
just wanted
for that.
to learn. Okay, great. No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions from any senators at this time, I'd like to bring up Director Mihu and Mr. Davis.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the delegation. Natasha May here on behalf of the Baltimore City Administration in support of House Bill 967. As has been discussed, this bill does authorize us to install 2 automated speed cameras on I-83, one northbound, one southbound, within the Baltimore City limits. And it's crucial for us to address the dangerous and deadly conditions on I-83. As Delegate Bridges had testified, the revenue generated from these speed cameras would first be allocated to pay for the operations. And then the additional revenue would be dedicated to roadway safety improvements until the sunset, June 30th, 2026. As has also been mentioned, this would put us in a similar posture to Indian Head Highway, Route 210 in Prince George's County. And I think a number of the questions that had been previously raised were in relation to this bill initially being drafted, similar to the bill that had brought forward the cameras on Indian Head Highway, who also had a lot of dangerous and deadly conditions. Senator McCray, to your question, and I just want to be sure I'm understanding in terms of notice, are you stating that the state provides, through the ticketing system, that they're not being ticketed right away and are provided just a cursory, you're speeding sort of notice, or if you're asking whether the city would provide notice generally to the residents stating that, you know, there will be cameras installed on I-83.
So I thought this was the other way around. We asked the questions, but but typically for like 30 days, when that camera moves, there's a number of warnings that are given out. Hey, just letting you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the ticketing process starts. But for state highways, but when they move those cameras, because ours are mobile, y'all's are kind of stationary, but when they move it into that location for a set time period, I'm not sure if it's 30 days, maybe 2 weeks, but they do send out warnings to let folks know that there is a camera there, then they start ticketing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And we can make sure to clarify that on our end. I will say that was the first time this question was raised. And so I wanted to be clear what.
The Senate does usually ask the best questions.
That's true.
And so with the testimony that had been provided, this is a priority of our administration. It is very important that we address the problems that are happening on I-83, and the revenue generated from this would allow us to do this. And separate from our previous discussion, this would be a very targeted speed camera system in order to address specifically the problems we're having on I-83. So with that, we would urge a favorable report.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Thank you. So I think a lot of the really great testimony has already been said. So I just want to reiterate, this is a very important public safety measure for the city of Baltimore. It has the support of Baltimore City Police Department. Delegate Bridges did mention the 1,700 calls for service just to Baltimore Police alone in 2020. And since last session, there have been 3 fatalities on 83. So this is again, a public safety issue. As far as the notice, the concerns about public notice, we definitely take that to heart. Senator McCray, there is an amendment that required those, I think the delegate had mentioned it, the speed sentries that alert people of the speeds and appropriate signage, but there will also be a robust public outreach leading up to the initiation of the cameras. And there will be, a public warning period as well. We are committed to that. So other than that, we obviously request, your support for this important measure. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for the administration or Baltimore City DOT, and it's kind of the same line of questioning with 226. So I guess my first question, and then it's going to be a follow-up question. Do you know how much we spent last year or the year before, so fiscal 2020 or fiscal 2019, in reference to improvements to I-83? And I think that this one is a little bit easier than the other one because that was more broader, but this is very limited to I-83.
Yeah, I'll take that because I think this is really specific to DOT. So I'm not aware of any major capital expenditures. There is a ton of maintenance that goes into just, your daily maintenance of the interstate. Like on the weekends, we have to do lane closures every once in a while to clear debris, fix lights. But in terms of capital expenses, the one that comes to mind last year in the fall of 2020, I believe we spent roughly $200,000 on restriping the interstate. So that was just paint. We just put paint down. This bill, depending on the camera revenue, would allow for more significant capital investment in terms of safety investment in the interstate.
So my follow-up, and then I'll move to everyone else, but my follow-up is, I think that the intent of the spirit of it is to make sure that I-83 actually improves from the revenue that we project from this respective bill. I think that it gets challenging if we start to move the monies from other places, so the city isn't doing what they were already doing, and then we just use this money to kind of supplant the money that was going to I-83. So I think that we have to be clear in reference to what did we spend in previous years, and make sure this is on top of because this one isn't as 226. This is very limited to I-83. So we should be able to say, this is what we spent, maybe on average the last 3 years or something like that, and then say that this money is going to go on top of that so that we can meet the spirit of the bill and make sure that we're serving our citizens in the manner that they need to be served. I'm going to go to Senator Sidnall.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Davis. You had mentioned that there were 3 accidents this past year. Were those 3 accidents in the zone that this camera is intended to be placed, or 3 deaths?
So they occurred within city limits. I could get the specific locations. I will say that the legislation authorizes the cameras to be placed anywhere within city limits on 83.
Well, this is different from last year then.
Well, last year's
bill, it was limited to a certain portion of I-83 near the Pepsi sign.
Last year's was 1 camera, and it was anywhere. This year it's 2, so we could do. We could talk offline, but we did focus. The big focus has always been on the Pepsi sign, and we put our test data camera at 41st Street southbound. That's how Delegate Bridges got, a lot of that data in terms of the speeding. So there are areas where it just makes sense from a safety standpoint to put these things. This will be strategically thought out.
I'll look forward to speaking with you afterwards. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Hayes.
Yeah, Senator McCray. The president mentioned this earlier, and I've heard talks about possibly turning down 83 for years. Given the parameters of this bill, has law department or AG really weighed on if it would be possible to use this money in part of the demolition of parts of 83? The way the bill is structured now, do you think it would accommodate that?
I'm assuming that's for me.
Yes.
Okay. So the way that the way it's written, the text is written, it says excess camera revenues go to roadway safety improvements on Interstate 83. So I think that's pretty plain and simple. But we could get a second legal opinion. But to me, it's pretty clear. If it's saying the money has to go to roadway safety improvements on Interstate 83, that doesn't really sound like there's any room right now for that to go towards deconstruction.
Yeah, and that's the point that I'm getting at. Can roadway improvement be an elimination of the roadway that's causing the problems?
That would improve it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can obviously, I think that's a great conversation to have. And, we'd certainly, we would certainly welcome that conversation. We definitely would be interested in having that conversation further.
Yeah. If you could just get clarity on that, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you. It looked like that's all the questions from the senators. Delegate Bridges, are you like moving your hand gestures? Like, we raised the hand with the button if you want to speak, bro.
Listen, Mr. Chair, I know you all do things very differently and it's probably a much better way than we do over in the House. But what I was trying to do was just get your attention to let you know that the House actually has work to do at 10 o'clock today.
Oh, okay.
So I was asking to be excused to get to the floor or the annex.
It looks, seeing that from Delegate Bridges, we're going to end the hearing for House Bill 967. We always enjoy you all coming over to this wonderful chamber. Colleagues, at this moment, there's no more further comments. Just want to see if there's anything for the good of our delegation, the Baltimore City Senate delegation, that folks wanted to bring up. Seeing none, hearing no further comments, I look forward to seeing you all next Friday's bill hearings or the voting. So we will be doing a lot of voting in reference to all of the bills that have already passed in the same posture in the bills that we currently heard today. So if there are amendments, if we can start working on them, that will be greatly appreciated. We will meet on Good Friday, everyone, April 2nd at 9 a.m. At this time, is there a motion to adjourn? It's been first by Senator Washington, seconded by Senator Bill Ferguson. This meeting ends 9:57 a.m. You all have a blessed day.